Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, what would happen if your mobile phone killed you?
We are tonight's entertainment.
I would rather watch Beautician and the Beast.
People don't forget.
And here we go.
Made for movies.
This is the Made for Movies podcast. I am your host, Eric Russo, and with me back on this wonderful Monday is my man with a plan, Aaron Wolf. What's up, buddy?
Hey, bud. How are you?
Can't complain. Very excited. We have a hell of a lineup today. Are you ready for this? I know
It's
you're
one of my
always ready.
favorite episodes we're ever going to record. I'm calling that within the first 25 seconds. So how about
Favorite
that?
episodes. Oh my God. I'm excited. I know we have of course, we have our box office update that's going to relate to our main event movie review of A Quiet Place 2, as well as our top 5 stories, and one that you're really looking forward to today for the Why Is This Happening? I know you texted me last week, sent me a picture of this, and I admit I was immediately looking forward to our conversation today. We have still yet to actually discuss this, so this will be the first time we talk about it, and hopefully the last time.
I really hope so, too, but I have a strong feeling that will come to haunt us for many years to come. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's a new universe. Spoiler alert. But let's just dive right into it. We're going to give you a little bit of a box office update. Finally, we have some life at the box office. A Quiet Place 2 screaming to $58 million. Silence is golden. This is amazing. $58 million. Just so the first one only did $50 million. So the fact that it beat the first one during a pandemic. Keep in mind, 2 weeks ago, Saw made $8 million on its opening weekend. So that just gives you an idea on how much people love this franchise.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? This is a crazy number.
No, it's great. I'm happy to be a part of that number. Saw it in theater. Decent experience overall. But yeah, I mean, the first one people didn't understand it at the beginning, like, oh, what's this movie? It's just a horror movie, but whatever. Yeah. And then after the buzz got out there for the first one, that's when it probably shot to the moon after their first weekend. But very impressive, especially again as we get towards the tail end of the pandemic. Starting to see more and more of these bigger numbers is definitely exciting. Happy to see it for the future.
Yeah, I anticipate that the third Quiet Place will be on the level of the original It, which did $128 million. It's the largest debut for a horror movie of all time. I have a feeling that with the goodwill from 2 movies, plus you figure we're probably 2 or 3 years away from that movie coming out, everything will be back to normal by then, and it will be the biggest horror movie of all time, especially if it's like a trilogy closing event. So looking forward to that. Little shout out for Cruella, made $27 million over the weekend. Pretty impressive because it did debut.
It beat Spiral by a mile.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
It's incredible. Especially this was available and is available on Disney Plus Premiere, which is $30 to rent it. Again, we were talking about, I don't know why anyone would do that when you can literally sign up for AMC Pass and it's $20 a month and you get to go to as many movies. But if you don't want to go to the movie theater yet, that's a pretty cool way to see it if you have a big family, I suppose. But let's just move into our top 5 stories of the week. Wolf, are you ready to get this party started?
Let's do it, man.
So we have a new trailer from Chris Pratt's Tomorrow War, the movie that will be coming out July 2nd on Amazon Prime. Wolf, what did you think of this trailer? And if this movie is available to see it in a theater, will you choose to watch it on Amazon Prime or will you go to a theater?
Yeah, the trailer was what it's worth. I think I understand what I'm getting with this movie, so it's not going to really spoil too much for us. As far as theaters, I probably won't go see this in a theater. Just I'll test it out first and at home. I think it's just one of those types of movies where it's not really predicated on the goodness of it by being in a theater. Obviously, there is going to be some sound differences from a home theater system versus obviously like an IMAX or an EMAX or one of those. But I don't know that it's getting the acclaim. Maybe I'll wait to see what some other people think of it first as well, and before I make that decision. But yeah, Chris Pratt's great. We've talked about this before. I think it'll be entertaining to say the least. But that's all.
Yeah, so where I'm at with all these pandemic movies and streaming movies is that I typically, for action movies, do have a tough time paying attention watching from my couch. Like, I'll just start looking at my phone, and when I go to a theater, I'm just more invested into the movie. Even if it's not a great movie, it gets way more of my attention. So I'm leaning towards, if this is available in a theater, and again, it's getting pretty good buzz, I will go see it in a theater just because I want to give it my undivided attention and experience it on the biggest screen possible. But if it's getting mediocre buzz, then I will not be going to see it in a theater. I really was not impressed with the trailer. I thought it looked very generic, very Edge of Tomorrow, which is... So one thing they're
It's
really
actually a pretty good movie.
That's a great movie. That's a great movie. But I don't need to see Chris Pratt starring in Edge of Tomorrow.
That's true. Tom Cruise does knock it out.
Yeah, it's a great movie. So yeah, the trailer looks a little generic, especially from when I read the description. I had this idea that it was going to be soldiers from all different. You'd have like World War II soldiers, Vietnam soldiers, and then like modern day teaming up. I thought that was a cool idea. Maybe throw in like a samurai or something. Tom Cruise, The Last Samurai. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. They still have not revealed the what the alien looks like, and typically in these movies they look super generic. So I'm hoping that it's got a really cool design. A Quiet Place definitely shows you that you can have an awesome monster. So we shall see. But let's move on to some more scary stuff. Old. So Old, the new trailer from M. Night Shyamalan, the movie that is coming out this summer, releasing on July 23rd, just dropped, inspired by the graphic novel Sandcastle. It's basically about a group of people who find themselves aging very fast on a beach. So, Wolf, did you get to check out this trailer, and do you like any M. Night Shyamalan movies?
That's a very good question. I did see the trailer actually as a preview for A Quiet Place 2, one of the previews. And I am not the biggest M. Night Shyamalan fan. No. Ever since Bruce Willis was dead the entire time for Sixth Sense, I've just been like, okay, dude.
What about Unbreakable,
twist.
though? You're a big superhero guy.
Yeah, I'm not even really a fan of that. And unfortunately, I'm a victim of circumstance when it came to Unbreakable. I watched it on a 10-hour flight from Paris, France, back to the United States, in between two fat guys, and I was in the middle seat. It couldn't have been any worse for me to try to escape into a movie.
Yeah.
But I was just getting all of my sensory overloaded by every other direction at the same time. So I revisited it, and I was just like, oh, I can't stop thinking about that flight, the smell, just everything. It was horrible. So it does suck. And then I didn't get a chance to try Glass or Patricia Made Me Do It, whatever that
Split.
one was. Split. That's right. And I don't like things like Signs. I did see Signs because I was a Mel Gibson guy. And it was just like, okay. No,
So what you're
they're not for
saying
me.
is he's your favorite director of all time.
Right. They're not. I think you can tell by my my droning on. This one I'm like, okay, they're getting old. Okay, so leave. That's what I kept saying the entire time. Like, get off of this place.
Maybe there will be an explanation as to why they can't leave, but
there's definitely going to be one. Like, oh, the portal closed or whatever dumb thing they're going to say. But anyway, like, yeah, I understand it. It'll have a nice twist, I'm sure, and I'll read all about it.
Well, I will be covering it on this podcast one way or another. I do find him interesting, M. Night Shyamalan. He's kind of like the Zack Snyder of horror, where he has a very distinct style and a lot of things he does really well as some frustrating things that he does. M. Night Shyamalan really struggles to write specific characters. Sometimes they're a little bit one-dimensional, but he usually comes up with a very great premise and a very great twist. Is pretty much what his movies have become known for, is the twist. So definitely will check it out. Hopefully it's something cool. I also like a couple of the actors in this. It's his first movie, I'm pretty sure one of his first movies anyway, that has not been filmed in Philadelphia in any capacity other than After Earth with Will Smith and Jaden Smith.
And that was filmed where? And an After Earth? Like
that was actually filmed in Philadelphia as well. But let's move on.
Of course it is, because Philadelphia is another planet. Yeah,
You're
exactly right.
Definitely. That's where I'm from, so you watch yourself. But we'll move on to another trailer. This was the most heavy week for trailers we've had in a while, and I think it comes down to with A Quiet Place 2 and Cruella coming out, they wanted to make sure that they had some hot material for the movie theaters, so that's why we're getting, I mean, we actually had about 4 or 5 that did not make our list, including one with Mark Wahlberg, where it's some sort of time travel or Edge of Tomorrow.
Is it Looper?
Yeah, it was Jumper. But it looked quite terrible going direct to Paramount Plus. Check that out. I will be skipping that one most likely, but we will move on. Edgar Wright will be directing the horror thriller Last Night in Soho, starring Anna Taylor-Joy. The first trailer just dropped. Wolf, I know you're not a big fan of thrillers, but what did you think of the trailer, and what do you think of this pairing, Edgar Wright, who did Shaun of the Dead, and Anna Taylor-Joy coming off of Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. I'm not the guy that seeks out too many thriller horror type of movies. I am a big fan of Anna Taylor-Joy from The Queen's Gambit. She murdered that performance better than I think anyone could have, and I'm slightly intrigued, but it's again one of those things where it didn't the trailer didn't really grab my enthusiasm to go see it immediately. But I don't know. Edgar Wright is obviously great for Shaun of the Dead. And
Baby Driver as well.
Baby Driver is a fantastic movie. I don't know. Do you think there's going to be any kind of like comedy element to this?
I think that it's going to be a clever thriller, closer to American Psycho than a horror movie. I think it's going to be maybe possible like satiring these types of movies. I think that Anna Taylor-Joy just brings like a wittiness to her performances that
Sure.
It will be clever, it will be self-aware. I expect big things just because Edgar Wright doesn't really make bad movies, and this looks very visually stunning, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a really unique visual style to it. So I'm expecting big things, and we shall see. I think she's going to go on a winning streak that will eventually end in an inevitable Oscar win somewhere down the line.
Let's hope.
Let's move into the top 2 news stories of the week. The first one comes to us from Sony. Kraven the Hunter movie has cast its leading role, and I almost said Anna Taylor-Joy again.
That would have been great.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, brother of Anna Taylor-Joy, is set to play the Spider-Man villain in a standalone picture. That's really messed up that we had to do these back to back to mess me up. But
what's with the three letter or the 3 word names? I don't understand. Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
I've never met someone with a 3-word name that I did not like. That's for sure. I've also never met anyone in my real life that I've had to refer to with 3 names. So we shall see.
I don't think people would really like Leonardo Francis DiCaprio. I don't think that would go very well. But
I mean, I would watch that movie. But back to the story. This is Sony's Marvel film, Kraven the Hunter. He has taken the lead role. No directors are attached to it. It does have a screenplay writer, Art Malcolm, and Matt Holloway, and Richard Wank. 3 screenplay writers. What could go wrong there? But Wolf, are you excited to see this take on the character with his casting? And how do you see this Sonyverse eventually coming together? Do you think Spider-Man will be involved, or will it just be the villains?
Yeah, I am a fan of Aaron Taylor Johnson. His roles have been pretty good in almost all the movies I've seen him in. I don't know too much about Kraven the Hunter specifically. I may have at one point read a comic book about him, or he may have been in a cartoon or something like that with Spider-Man. But it looks like a pretty badass character that could be one of those good anti-hero type of stories like a Venom. And I don't see how there's any way that Sony won't try to replicate maybe like a Marvel type of collaboration somehow, bringing these guys together against some other foe. And with all the movies they're kicking out, Morbius and all these things, like I think that's an inevitability. And I'm particularly looking forward to seeing if there's any kind of end credit scene in the new Venom movie that might tie into something like this. We never know. Obviously, by the time that's released, they could shoot something and put that in. So it'd be cool to see. And I'm a big fan of anything Spider-Man, so I'll give it a crack for sure.
I'm with you there. I think that inevitably I do like the casting, by the way, especially the picture I'm looking at. He does seem to look very much like Kraven the Hunter.
He's already got a beard.
I will say some interesting casting news about this. It was rumored that they offered the role to Adam Driver first, which that would have been amazing.
Oh, man.
I think Adam Driver is probably holding out hope to go to the real Marvel Studios and not be stuck on Sony's side, which is probably a death sentence. But I certainly think that their plan has to be some sort of team-up villain movie first, especially they just came out and said that, and then bring Spider-Man into the fold. So, maybe you get your anti-hero movie first, and then they do like a Sinister Six movie, although as far as I know, at least in the comics I've read and the series I've seen on TV, this is not the Sinister Six as far as the grouping of people. That would be more your traditional Doc Ock, Vulture, so maybe we'll get that actually in Spider-Man No Way Home, but I'm looking forward to it. I don't really have much interest in the standalone Morbius or Kraven movies, but I do like the actors, so I'm hoping that they're really good movies. I don't expect them to be. They seem like very generic origin story, kind of similar to Venom, which I thought Venom was very average and mediocre, but I think the performance of Tom Hardy elevates it to a movie worth watching. So hopefully these two follow in that footsteps.
For sure.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, I think we already saw Morbius when we watched The Little Things, so I feel like that's going to be enough for me on that one too. So I couldn't agree more there. But yeah, you're spot on with Venom.
I mean, I did love Jared Leto in The Little Things, so
he did the only good part.
Yeah, for 4 minutes. But let's move into the top story. Got some serious deals going on. Amazon just bought MGM Studios for $8.45 billion. This will not affect the release of the new James Bond movie moving forward, but all properties will be owned by Amazon. Just to give people an idea, Disney spent a little less than $8.45 billion on Marvel and Star Wars combined. So you could see MGM is not the most valuable property in Hollywood, but they do have a lot of some series as far as the James Bond is probably the most popular. So I ask you, Wolf, as far as this deal goes, do you like the fact that some of these streamers are buying actual movie studios now? And do you think this could affect the quality of a series like James Bond moving forward?
So yeah, I have mixed feelings about these bigger companies buying up studios that just shoot out content and content and content. The majority of which I don't know anyone who's ever come close to watching maybe 10% of the stuff that gets released streaming wise. Like,
yeah, it's
just so much out there. You'd have to make it every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But being that sometimes they do release content a little bit sooner than you'd anticipate, or not putting it in theaters like an HBO Max did very recently with several movies, like because it's a pandemic, they just kind of shifted and were able to do that. That part I kind of like. So obviously as we move forward and things change, that will certainly probably go back to normal. But I do think that just as a someone who doesn't like monopolies, like we could end up paying $20 a month for every streaming service here pretty soon if all these companies just gobble them up and then they just jack the prices up because it's like, oh yeah, go to someone else. Oh, there is no one else. You got to come here to get this.
It will be for sure the similarities to cable. You'll spend $100 a month on your 5 streamers and you'll own every single piece of content that will ever be released. There will be no more cable and everything. I do agree.
Right. But yeah, as far as will it affect the quality? I certainly hope it will not. And being that they have billions of dollars to spend on a single, movie studio, I really hope that they kind of keep some of the content good. And as far as like a James Bond, I have a feeling we're going to have a new Bond soon, and that who knows what the quality of that'll end up being. So. I will hold out hope that it remains good, but I'm not also holding my breath at the same time.
Yeah, I'm with you. as far as this deal goes, it does worry me, like you're saying. I think we're heading towards a territory where you have Warner Brothers, HBO Max, you have Netflix could potentially, I could see them buying Sony, especially with a lot of the deals we're seeing going on. If Sony's deal with Marvel ever expires or they just come to a disagreement, I definitely think Sony is going to be a Netflix-owned company within 20 years. I just smell that. They'll end up buying it for, $30 or $40 billion. I'm sure Sony's a little more valuable. So I did see one of the executives from Amazon came out and said that as far as James Bond goes, it will get worldwide release. So this will not be going to streamers. That's encouraging. I think that they have the ability to make good movies, but one thing MGM has done really well with the Bonds is cast it really well. Mm-hmm. So they take a lot of pride in that. So I'm a little worried that the casting for James Bond, the next one, is going to be someone more famous, as I was hoping it would be someone like Daniel Craig, who we did not know and just did such a terrific job. So hopefully they go with an unknown, like we talked about a black James Bond. I think that would be awesome. Someone that's a little more relatively unknown to turn them into a star. I think that's what Hollywood needs, is we need to use these IPs to create new stars instead of relying on the old stars. It's like Hulk Hogan wrestling when he's 78 years old. It's time to build up the next generation of movie stars. That way you can have the next generation of IPs, right?
Right.
So we'll move on from here, but yeah, it does. It seems like it's the calm before the storm. I see a lot of other deals going down similar to this one coming, but let's move into something you are looking forward to discussing today. The always fun, always controversial Wolves. Why is this happening? News story of the week. Willy Wonka returns. Timothée Chalamet will play a young Willy Wonka in a new origin tale from Warner Brothers. Wolf, there's only one thing to ask you at a time like this, and that is, why is this happening?
It's like you said the words, a young Willy Wonka, and I couldn't hold my laughter in right there. And all I can picture in my head is Johnny Depp playing the guy in Alice in Wonderland. What's that guy's name? The Riddler or whatever, like the jokester guy,
the Mad Hatter.
The Mad Hatter. And I'm like, I just see that face, and I see like Timothée Chalamet with the white makeup and all that. But I know it's not the same. But I feel like it's the exact same thing. And I mean, Willy Wonka's a horrible person. Like, we could just talk about that, right? Are we going to see like his origins of being horrible?
So this is going to be the Joker.
This is going to be literally the Joker set in 1984 in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I wonder if it's like his dad, Billy Zonka, was, just being a dickhead to him or whatever. Like, it would be so. I don't know what direction they'd go with this. I have just no hopes. And Timothée Chalamet, fantastic in pretty much everything.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
great.
He'll be great as Willy Wonka, I promise you.
I'm curious, the Oompa Loompa thing, is that like even PC anymore? Like, there's so many levels to this movie.
So I'm expecting this to be more like Solo, a Star Wars story. We're gonna see him. We're gonna see him meet the Oompa Loompas. It's gonna be majestic. So the problem is, as much as we make fun of this, the reason that this is happening is because the studio wants to make money, and the Willy Wonka remake made $474 million in 2005, which probably equates to somewhere around $1 billion. Keep in mind, that is right after Pirates of the Caribbean came out. Johnny Depp was the biggest movie star in the world. He is a very great actor, and he does have Dune coming out. Do I think that he's someone that people are going to go see because he's in the movie yet? No, I don't.
Right.
I think there's only 2 or 3 actors in the world. You have The Rock. Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio. There's a couple still left, but it's very few and far between. So this will make a decent amount of money, but it's not a very good idea. And he's such a great actor. I'd rather see him focusing on things that are better.
Right. Why is he relegated to this? It just seems like it's such a crazy thing, and it's back to my point. I've made this point maybe every episode so far, is that there's no original ideas anymore. I get it. It's a origin story of Willy Wonka. Have we ever seen that? No, but we've seen plenty of fucking Chocolate Factory, excuse me, where it's like I'm over it. Why is this happening? Like, seriously, why is this happening?
Let me guess the
Cash
end.
grab.
He starts a chocolate factory.
It's like Black Widow. Oh, she's dead. Oh, I wonder if she wins in this movie.
Well, that's just a good movie. So
That's just a good movie.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I agree with you. IP rules the land. We complain that there's not enough original ideas in Hollywood, yet we don't go see movies when they are original ideas. Instead, we go see Willy Wonka prequels. So
Yes.
let's move on. We're switching it up this week. Quiet Place 2 came out. Hopefully you saw it. If you didn't, we're going to keep our review as spoiler-free as possible. At the very end, we will discuss spoilers. But we want to get to some fan comments first. Got a few here. One related to, it's going to be related to the Saw series that we just did our special episode on. Really appreciate it. We got a lot of feedback as far as like which movies were everyone's favorite. I'm going to highlight one. Comes to us from Molly Cyrus 742. As far as their favorite, they go with Saw 2 just because they felt it completely changed the entire dynamic of the Saw franchise and really set up all the sequels going forward, as well as a great Tobin Bell performance. Thank you so much for your comments. Moving forward, yeah, I do agree that the Saw 2 really, if you're looking at the franchise, Wolf, you're not a huge fan of Saw 2, correct?
I've seen it once, and I have not watched it again, but I didn't hate the movie by any means.
Didn't hate it, but my point being, it's so much different than Saw 1, which you're a big fan of.
Yeah, it's way different.
And
I agree there.
And the sequels are so much more similar to Saw 2. So I agree with that, absolutely. Thank you so much for your comments. We also have a couple comments sent in to us from J Omega Dance on Instagram. First question he has for us, Wolf, is how do you think movie theaters will evolve post-pandemic? As far as related, like, what do you think they'll do to keep us coming?
Okay. I think that they'll probably not do too much to change it, in all honesty. It's already kind of set up where now they're thinking about safety above all else, so it's limited capacity. As soon as those restrictions are gone, I think we'll be back to packed theaters, especially for some blockbusters. And I do think they'll keep some of the things they have started, like being able to rent a theater, because I've seen that, it's not overly expensive to go do if you have an event or, when a family get together, something like that you want to go do and toss in a nice movie, popcorn, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that'll definitely stay. But other than that, I see things getting back pretty close to where we were before.
I agree. I think the future of movie theaters may look a little different, actually, I think people will still be going, but I think we could be looking at a situation where it's more of an automated experience for people. So maybe you have a 3 to 4 movie theater venue, and I really only see blockbusters playing in movie theaters. And I'm talking like 10 years from now, not this year and next year. Mm-hmm. A situation where almost everything goes straight to streaming. But I think because these theaters their operation costs are so high, and not to mention all the employees they have to have, I think it makes more sense to have a much smaller movie theater, maybe 4 or 5 theaters that, basically you don't even need anybody really working there. Maybe you have 1 or 2 people, popcorn automated, drinks automated, everything automated. It makes more sense to me. The other option, if you're going to have a bigger movie theater, and he even mentioned this, is like a subscription-based plan like we have with our AMC A-List. That makes more sense to me, where you're paying just like a streamer service. Maybe they start playing TV shows there, movies, old movies and stuff, like just constantly using those theaters. That way, if you're going to have 30 theaters, you may as well have a little bit more variety, because there's not going to be that many movies worth seeing in theaters, I think. But let's move on. Another question here. As far as video game movies go, will video game movies ever be as successful as comic book films? Why or why not? And then what video game has the best chance of being like a critical success and financial?
Wow, that's a crazy good question. And I think, like, as we sit now, not right away, but in the long run, I think video game movies have an excellent chance of actually overtaking comic book movies, simply because when's the last time you read a comic book versus when's the last time you played a video game? I think that question as the generational shifts happen, will change significantly. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't looked at a comic book in, I don't know, maybe even 10, 15 years, something like a crazy number. But I played video games. Like, so it's headed in that direction based on the age of, the new generation and what they're exposed to versus what previous generations have been. So I certainly think it could. And based on like what are the most popular games that are out there, obviously we have like Mortal Kombat already is kind of a mainstay. Didn't do that great again, but if in the future there's something like a I don't know, like a Minecraft movie, I don't know, like that seems to be one of the bigger games that's ever existed in the world. Fortnite, another huge one. Like we're also seeing kind of like Without Remorse, which is a Tom Clancy video game based character. So those are again becoming more frequent. I'm not saying it's going to be like the movie Pixels. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that piece of garbage, but total waste of money. But again, because of the generational change from comics to video games, I could see that happening in 15, 20 years, certainly.
Absolutely. It's definitely a possibility. I'm going to say that it will never be as big as comic book films because comic book films are not, in my opinion, most people that watch the movies don't even read comic books, but they have so much built-in goodwill from the Avengers, from the Dark Knight series, that at this point, general movie-going audience associates a comic book movie with a good movie. And general movie-going audience right now associates video game movies with really bad movies. And it's not impossible. I mean, if you remember the 90s, comic book movies were terrible. It takes a string of 5 or 10 good ones to really change the stigma. For me, the biggest issue with video game movies and why they're so bad is that they tend to either completely deviate from the formula that makes the games good and focus on parts that aren't part of the games. Even worse is when they try to add characters that were never in the game, like the actor from Mortal Kombat, as well as the entire Resident Evil series is based off a character that's not in the games. Big mistake in my opinion, but the bigger issue is these games are typically long-form storytelling, where a comic book is, you can take a simple idea from a comic book and turn it into a 2-hour movie. It's hard to take a 25, 30-hour game, simplify it into 2 hours, and have it be good. So in my opinion, I think the future of video games is on streaming as limited TV series. One that I think is going to be the first truly great one is going to be the Last of Us series on HBO, from the creator of Chernobyl as well as the writer of the game. It's going to follow the path of the game. I think it's going to be fantastic, and it's going to show people this is how you can take a story and expand on the story, which is what really we should be doing. Not trying to retell the exact same events, but actually add to it, make it a story worth telling. So I think TV series is where it's heading, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, those are all good points. I agree.
So let's move on to our main event of the evening, A Quiet Place 2. This is our official made-for-movies review of A Quiet Place 2, directed once again by John Krasinski, written by John Krasinski this time, that's a change, starring Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, Cillian Murphy. Wolf, expectations going into this movie as far as how you like the original, as well as just seeing some of the trailers?
I was a big fan of the first one. It's one of those rare kind of scarier movies that I do really, really like. And my expectations were basically to the moon. I have to say, like, the first one was that the storytelling, the actual filming and the direction and all that stuff was excellent. So I was expecting the same thing, being that, again, it's the same director as the first one, so that's excellent. Who doesn't like Jim from The Office, of course?
Right.
So, yeah, I was really, really looking forward to this. I was bummed it was pushed back so many times, and then thrilled that it was brought back up again. So that's amazing. So, yeah, a lot of anticipation going in.
Cool. Absolutely. Same for me. Really looking forward. I love the first one. I think it's a great horror movie. John Krasinski, really big fan of his from The Office. Really excited to see what he did as a serious actor. I thought he knocked it out of the park. Emily Blunt, always terrific. Most impressed with the kids in the first movie. I thought they were fantastic. I'm pretty sure Millicent Simmons, she is hearing impaired or deaf.
I think she actually is, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that really helps out. I think the fact that they cast her is something that Hollywood should be doing more of. Another movie I saw recently on Hulu called Run cast a girl actually that's in a wheelchair to play the role, and I think it adds a sense of realism to the movie and really helps out. So Quiet Place, the writers were not returning for this one, so I'm always a little wary. John Krasinski has not written that many things, so I assume that he'd be able to, especially because the screenwriting is not too complex, and he was so heavily involved in the first one. And there's not that much dialogue, so
right.
that always helps out for sure. But definitely excited for this one. I avoided almost all the trailers too, which really, really helped. A couple things in the trailers I was disappointed to see spoiled some pretty big parts of the movie, which is very unfortunate. I'm all on board. I think no trailer should be able to show a clip after the half-point mark in a movie. I think it should be against the law.
Sure.
But let's move into general thoughts. Wolf, what are your general thoughts? Quiet Place 2, John Krasinski directed.
I am so happy and excited to say that I absolutely loved the movie. I was entertained. It was a perfect length. And it had some performances that, like, I almost stood up out of my chair. Luckily, I was in a recliner seat, but I would have stood up and applauded. I unfortunately had a little bit of a few talky people in our theater, which severely bummed me out, and someone who was actually texting the entire time with their ringer on. So it wasn't like they put it on vibrate and were texting. Bing, every so often with the actual flashlight. I don't know if you've seen the warning light on your iPhone. You can do that. So that was a little bit upsetting. It did detract slightly from my experience, but the movie made up for every bit of that, and it was great. It's just like I again, like, I hope people can understand. I'm coming up with very few words to describe this, whereas a movie I hate, I seem to go on. Like I can't think of anything other than awesome, great. It's a wonderful movie, and I really encourage everyone to go see it for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, so on your first point, as far as the people in the movie theater go, there are 3 things in this world that should be crimes, in my opinion. You should go to jail for.
Yes.
The first being pick up your own dog shit, especially when your dog shits on someone else's lawn. The second being leaving your shopping cart right next to your car at the grocery store. And the third being talking in a movie theater or on your phone in a movie theater. I think you all should be arrested, and I think
we should bring back the guillotine for all 3 of those. Just chop them up. Done.
I agree. And for a movie like this, I wouldn't mind seeing, like, you know, how they have, like, the federal law, like, you can't copy this movie. For A Quiet Place, it's like, this movie needs to be quiet, so you will be ejected from the theater if you talk. So I was really disappointed to hear that you had a bad experience. My theater was not as good as the first one. I remember the first time I saw A Quiet Place, I was afraid to eat my popcorn because it was so quiet.
Yes.
I could just hear me munching on my popcorn. I didn't want to ruin the experience for anyone. This one, I had people laughing at things that weren't funny, especially related to, like, children potentially dying in the opening of the movie. No main characters, just a spoiler, but yeah, it was it was throwing me off. I was like, that's not supposed to be funny. But
yeah,
aside from
no
that,
part of this movie is a comedy. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, definitely not. So that was kind of weird that half of the theater was, like, uncontrollably laughing. But let's move into my general thoughts. So I have very high expectations. I am a huge fan of the horror genre, so I expect a lot from this movie, and I was going to hold it to a high standard, and I'm very happy to say that it exceeded all of my expectations. I think it's an improvement on the first one in pretty much every way. Not that it's necessarily a better movie, because this one is essentially the continuation of that story. So you don't get A Quiet Place 2 without the first Quiet Place, and I'm very well aware of that. The first one does a little bit of a better job mixing the sound, at least from my theater experience, as far as the first one is a lot more quiet. This one has a lot more action, so you don't really get to take in the scenery in the first one, as far as the waterfall scene, just the little things around the house, like when the kids are playing the board game in the first movie. You just hear every minute detail, whereas this one, is just nonstop action, so you don't get those quiet moments quite as often. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it really helped out the story, but John Krasinski, man, I think him not really being in this movie, aside from, the opening prologue, helps out a lot because he clearly gets to focus on directing. I think he does a much better job at handling the suspense in this movie. It took me back to Jurassic Park, had a lot of that Steven Spielberg vibes, and I always appreciate that. It had this very classic movie monster feel, and he has such a respect for this genre. It's just amazing. Like, this guy from The Office has become one of my favorite directors so quickly, and I can't wait to see what he does after I'm assuming he's going to make a third Quiet Place and then move on to something fresh, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in the future and see if he can handle other genres as well, because this is a hell of a debut. But I have to give the majority of the credit in this to the acting. Emily Blunt is fantastic again.
I love her to death.
Yeah.
And everything she's in, I'm going to watch. Even Mary Poppins.
She plays this role so well. I'm sure it helps that she has her husband directing. But the kids, man, this movie is about the kids for sure. Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, complete game changer of a performance from both of them. They were great in the first one, and they were so much better in this one. They are the stars of the movie, too, which I thought's really cool that the parents take a backseat this time. But my favorite part of the movie is none other than Cillian Murphy. He, as Emmett, he is so good in this movie. I can't even begin to say how happy I was with his performance. Every little thing he does, he's acting with his eyes a lot, very similar to Tom Hardy. As Bane, his face is covered up for a portion of the movie. Every little thing they do with him, the screenplay, everything makes sense to me, and it's so well done. I can't tell people how happy I am. If you like the first one, there's no way you will not like this one. If you don't like the first one, you're probably not going to like this one. That's about as much as I could sum up, but overall, I love this movie. I don't want to do scores because I think it's a perfect movie, but I know it's not a 10 out of 10. Like, I'm aware it's not as good as Jaws. Like, I understand that, but it's a perfect horror movie sequel, and everyone will love it. I promise you that. But let's get into our scores before we do spoilers.
Absolutely. I know this is one of the ones where I've been literally since I got out of the theater, like, racking my brain to try to find a way to give it a 10 out of 10. And I really think, like, A Quiet Place 1 is a 9 out of 10 all day long.
Yeah.
Like, amazing movie, rewatchable, suspenseful, great. And like you said, some of the more artistic elements, meaning the sound editing and just the way they did it, is vastly different from from A Quiet Place 2. Like, A Quiet Place 2 had more music. Like, you had a score and you had, a lot more action. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to give A Quiet Place 2 a 10 out of 10.
Let's go.
I'm just going to do it. Let's just put it up right now as a future potential Hall of Famer. I'm going to put that in right there.
I love it. I expected that based off our comments, and it's very hard to disagree with you because, again, there's not one thing wrong in the movie. The pacing is flawless. If anything, the movie's biggest flaw, and we'll get into some spoilers in a little bit, is that it ends too early, in the sense of I was shocked that it was over, upset that it was over, and truly wanted it to go another at least 15 minutes. There's one character in particular that I was a little bummed did not have that much screen time, and it's a spoiler, so I'll save that. He's
one of my favorite actors. I love him to death.
So we're on the same page on who that is, and he's just wasted in general in Hollywood, but so was Cillian Murphy at a time. So looking forward to see what he does next. But yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Just, again, as a horror sequel, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. As a movie overall, it's a 9 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with it. Everyone should go see it. That gives it a 9.5 out of 10 from us. Literally a perfect movie, and I cannot wait to see what they do with this story next. I just pray that John Krasinski returns and he does not hand it off to a young filmmaker, which, as we see with the Conjuring franchise, is what they're doing for the third movie. James Wan is no longer in. So I think Krasinski comes back for one more, and then they continue on in a new direction with a new story set in the same universe is what they'll most likely do, because The Quiet Place is going to be a big franchise for the next 20 years. I promise you that. But let's get into some spoilers. I have a lot of stuff I'm excited to talk about. I know you do too. So, public service announcement. This is the last thing we're talking about on the podcast today, so you are not missing anything else. We did this intentionally. If you have not seen this movie, please do not listen to the rest of this. Go watch it. Come back. Please go see it. It's amazing. If you're still
we're gonna
here,
give you 5 seconds to hop off.
do 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 do. All right, let's get into it. Spoilers, Wolf. Let's talk about this. We'll go through. There's only about 4 or 5 scenes to highlight, but let's start with the prologue of the movie. We get the flashback to before this all happened on the first day. How did you feel about the way they did this scene? Give me some thoughts.
I thought it was one of the best ways to start a movie of all time as a sequel, because a lot of the questions that we did have from A Quiet Place 1 that were not answered were definitely addressed in this beginning prologue. And the one thing I had no clue on is, like, where did these things come from? What is the origin of these monsters? They're super crazy, badass monsters, and we've always wanted to know, like, what happened. Was it a government thing? Was it a alien thing? And we find out there's a meteor or maybe a spaceship or something else that we still don't know, which is actually really cool, that crashes on Earth. And then mayhem ensues in upstate New York. It's really, really cool. Like, this small town just goes nuts. They're seeing reports on the news of Shanghai in, like, millions dead, like crazy things. And we'd never gotten that before, how it started. And some of the action in that first scene is just as suspenseful as some of the other parts, but it's all completely noisy because no one knows any better at this point. I was hooked instantly into the movie.
Absolutely. The sound mixing for the first 10 minutes is stellar. Again, a lot of callbacks. One thing I enjoy about the opening is you can never assume that people saw the first one, especially when you're trying to grow a franchise. There's going to be 20, 30% that maybe skip the Quiet Place 1 that just think the second one looks good. So by doing this prologue, it essentially catches the audience up on how these monsters work, how the world works, and what to expect without having to do a recap of the first movie, which I think is really well done. But yeah, seeing John Krasinski back, I think this is a great move by them to show a familiar face. I love that they showed him interacting with Cillian Murphy here. I thought that was really well done.
That's awesome.
From the trailers, my expectations were just going to be that they found Cillian Murphy. I love that he was actually the one that was lighting the flame, that we saw from the first movie. I thought that was really well done, and it removed that intrigue of is he going to end up being a bad guy, which I really didn't want that to be the case, although it definitely seemed like that's where they were going to take it. So I'm glad they didn't waste 45 minutes trying to make you think he might be evil and they can't trust him. So that could have been a whole movie by itself. I'm really glad they went in a different direction. But yeah, fantastic opening. From there, we move literally right back to the beginning of the first Quiet Place, picks up the second it ends. I really like that. I like how they use the first scene as almost a PTSD moment for the kid. Everything's just so perfectly done in this movie. But how did you feel about their run to meet Emmett for the first time, that whole entire chase scene, just as well as how this family handles their business on the road?
Yeah, it was just like, okay, we're about to get off their little sand path that they've always walked on and go into unfamiliar territory. So right there, I'm just like on the edge of my seat, waiting to be startled by the next sound that happens. And then when they're running through that warehouse exterior area and there's a scope on them, we're just like, oh my gosh, what's this? It could be bad, it could be great. And then we see one of the monsters come after them again, and they use the weaponized, radio. It was just great, and I thought it was shot so well, and it still left you wondering, like, okay, well, there's so much more of Earth than what we've been exposed to as to what's going on in this universe, that you really have a billion questions. But it also does it in such a way where you're like, I think they're going to address everything. You're not trying to search for the answer because there are so many possibilities. So that kind of hooked me in even more, that I wasn't like predicting the movie, and I tend to do that with way shittier movies, like oh, I know how this is gonna go, like with Mortal Kombat or with whatever. So I really love this scene, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I don't know if it's Killian or Cillian, but he steals the movie. His performance is wonderful, and his introduction and just all his little mannerisms that he brings to the table, like the stopwatch for air supply, and like like knowing when the monster's going away, coming back, all of his like drawings of his son, so that gives it to the audience that, oh, okay, well, I guess his son and his wife didn't make it from the first scene, so that's really sad, and he's in a pretty bad place. So he's not exactly like going to be mentally all there, which then lends itself to so much more good dialogue and action in the later parts of the movie.
Can't agree more. One thing I particularly liked is when you see them running through the field, you see him with a gun. Movie trope, he's going to save them. He's going to shoot the monster with the sniper rifle. And I just love that this family, you have a woman who just gave birth, a deaf daughter, and a son who was like pissing himself in the first movie and couldn't even do anything until the very end of the movie, that they're handling these monsters that he's never even known you could kill. Like
right.
no one knows how to kill these monsters. So I think just seeing his reaction to this family on the run with the baby is just miraculous, and I think they do such a good job of showing how far they've come since being terrified to even make a sound in the first movie. The kid hitting the bear trap was brutal.
Oh.
He's fantastic acting. I love that he's just screaming his brains out and he can't even hold it in. I think it's just perfectly done. We'll move into the next pivotal scene in the movie. As far as the whole purpose of the movie is essentially they are trying to make it to wherever the broadcast is coming on the radio to put the hearing piece up to potentially help people around the area kill all these monsters. And we get a scene it's basically on a dock. They're trying to, Emmett and his daughter, Millicent Simmons, not his daughter, John Krasinski's daughter in the movie, are trying to make it to the dock to get a boat because they assume that these radio broadcast is coming from an island. So I ask you, what did you think of this world-building scene where it could potentially go for a sequel as well?
Yeah, it was alluded to earlier in the movie by a couple lines of dialogue about what that Cillian Murphy said about, do you know what the rest of people are like, or have you seen anybody else? Like, it's not good out there. Like, it's and that's all it is. And then we find out it's basically a rape cult. I don't know what else to call it. It's like
we don't know. We still don't know.
An insane group of human beings who have also learned to be very quiet, but have come together in this kind of a sadistic group. And they clearly have bad intentions all the way through, setting traps and living near the water. We find out some really other cool stuff about this is that the creatures are not able to swim. So that's a big piece of knowledge to know. If you want to be safe, you might want to go to a place that has water on it, or around it. But it literally could set up 10 more movies, in my opinion, just from this one scene. Like, what are all the other people on islands doing that didn't get an alien? Are they just fine? Like, what? Like, there's a billion questions that are going through my head. That one being the biggest, but. I really want to know more about this group of bad people. Like I'm scared to death of it, but I want more.
It also seemed like the little girl that they were using for bait potentially was infected with something. Her face had a red rash on it.
She didn't look good at all. Yeah,
she didn't look good. So it makes me think that maybe something else has happened to these people. Maybe they are somewhat infected from some sort of virus that's given off from these monsters, which we've seen in other movies as well. I'm really looking forward to see where they take this idea. I think this is what intrigued me most for a potential sequel, and we got zero answers for it, so I thought it was really well done. I also thought this is one of Cillian Murphy's best action scenes in the movie, especially when he stabs the guy in the throat before he jumps in the water. Everything is so perfectly done, especially the callback to him. The only word he knew to speak to the girl is the dive, which I thought was really well done. A good callback to the beginning of the movie. And just their relationship on the road is fantastic as far as he doesn't know how to speak to her, and he's not enunciating, he's not looking at her, and she gets so frustrated with him because it's the first person that she hasn't been able to understand for the last 2 years. So just seeing her take control of their relationship and be the leader of that group, because he's more messed up than she is at this point, is really, really well done. Especially the father-son dynamic that we saw, father-daughter dynamic that we saw in the first movie. She battled with John Krasinski as well, so it's just such a different dynamic, but also really well done. But let's move on. Final two pivotal scenes we'll talk to. Just them getting to the island and finding out the island is not what they expect, as well as we'll go into the climax of the movie with the multiple climaxes happening at the same time.
Yes. It's cool to discover, and this is where we'll get into one of my favorite actors of all time. He might be my favorite. I know I say that a lot. Again, it's a recurring joke, but Digimon Hansu, he is in Gladiator. He's in, Never Back Down, like in so many good roles. He has just always crushed it for me. Blood Diamond being probably my favorite role of his by a mile. I definitely agree with you. If anything were to take this from a 10 out of 10 in my mind, it was that he wasn't in it enough.
He was wasted, I thought.
His character's actually called Man on Island. He didn't even have a name, and that was a little bit upsetting. But it was cool that there's this community. They're kind of surviving. We find out we just found out that these guys the aliens can't swim, so you're definitely safe if you can get to a place like that. But then chaos ensues when they find out that one of the aliens was literally just hitching a line on the boat and got to the island, and then causes all of it to go to shit basically. But his performance, he's kind of like a soft-spoken guy. He's more calm than what we've seen. He's kind of bringing Cillian Murphy's character kind of back to earth a little bit until it does go haywire. So definitely love this. And then obviously it leads into the radio station and our final battle, basically, just in three places at once, which was amazing.
Absolutely. I will say their reaction to seeing the community, I thought they could have gone a little further with it. They started to show like how amazed they were, but it just skips ahead to their around the fire. Again, I feel like the movie is so tightly paced. If there's one section that could have been expanded by about 5 or 10 minutes, I think this section would have helped tremendously, because it would have made how do you pronounce the actor's name again?
Digimon,
Digimon Hansu's character, which his character's name is just Man on Island.
Right.
Like, he could have gotten the character name and a little more time to develop, thus making his death a little more impactful. I was sad to see him go, but as a character, he had just appeared, so there really wasn't much to it.
Right.
One thing I really did like in this scene is Cillian Murphy ends up saving a little boy who loses his father. This movie is very good at subtlety, and Cillian Murphy lost his child on the first day. And while they don't spend 5 minutes, overindulging in this moment, he saves the kid, he puts him in the closet, and I just had this feeling, just by his eyes and not him saying a word, that he was adopting this kid,
right,
and he was not going to let anything happen to this kid. And I fully expect in the third movie that this kid will be back, and that will be who he's taking care of. I just have a feeling, and he'll probably be taking care of the other character we just talked about, Man on Island's kid, who was also in that closet. Right. I would like to see that. I think he'll have a new relationship, and I think that will be cool. Let's move into the finale. So we get intersecting stories between Emily Blunt's character and Noah Jupe's character, Marcus and Evelyn, are fighting against a monster, as well as we get Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmons' character fighting against the monster that attacked the island. Simultaneously, with the ultimate goal, she has to get on that radio broadcast to save both of them. How did you feel about the way they shot this and just the overall tension?
This without question was one of my favorite scenes in any movie. And it's not even close to a lot of it. It's so suspenseful. It's the back and forth of the setting to setting. It was so good. I'm literally struggling to find words other than great and amazing and perfect, because that's what I'm feeling. Like it kept you on the edge of your seat literally the entire time. Are they going to get there? Are they going to do it? Or is this the end of A Quiet Place? We don't know. Obviously they did leave a little bit of suspense. So I figured with the dock scene where we find out this group of weirdo humans, that there would probably be some extra movies coming from that. But With this one, Cillian Murphy's leg, he gets torn to shreds.
I thought he was a goner for
I
sure.
thought he was definitely gone, and that Millicent Simmons was going to be the lone hero here. But happy to say, the way I thought about how they just kind of wrapped it up when they end up killing the monsters, basically saving each other, is that it ended so abruptly, almost like Spiral ended, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're gonna go.
Also, the first
Quiet
movie
Place
did
3,
the same thing.
Exactly. A Quiet Place 3 is starting right here, and that
I
makes
agree.
me so thrilled, because I honestly think that's the way a lot of storytelling should be. Is that
Yeah.
we know all of those little details and even get filled in a little bit more. I'm interested in the prologue of the next one. What will that be about? It could be anything. So definitely did set up a sequel, and you'll have to literally murder me to keep me out of the theater from seeing that one for sure.
Yeah, so I had one issue earlier in the movie where they did intersecting scenes. So while they were on the dock trying to get the boat from the crazy people, Emily Blunt and her son were dealing with the monster, and they were setting the warehouse on fire. Same time, they're setting the boathouse on fire. It was intersecting, and I didn't think it needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't make storyline sense for those two stories because they weren't connected in any way. And I thought that it hurt both a little bit because it was jumping back and forth, and I think they could have spread them out. Again, it could have been a little bit longer, but at the end, they redo this. They intersect between the two stories, and it is perfect. I don't know if that was like by choice, to do it again. I thought it works really well because their story, Emily Blunt's and her son, is dependent on her story, so it makes perfect sense. It reminded me so much of the Velociraptor scene in the original Jurassic Park as far as tension goes. It's really, really well done as far as...
Are you talking about where like they're in the underground and then simultaneously there's attacks happening up above? They're like shutting off the power like that?
I was saying the part with Emmett and... I always forget the deaf girl's name. Millicent Simmons. When they're just in the radio station... Just the way that they're hiding from the monster's going room to room.
Oh, okay. I got you. Like the kids running from the Velociraptors.
Yes,
In the
very,
kitchen. Mm-hmm.
very similar. Very well done. Yeah, just literally a perfect ending to the movie. I did not know it was coming as close to the end as it was. I could see people complaining that this ending is very similar to the first movie. I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
In the first movie, Emily Blunt is taking control, right? She just lost her husband, and she's taking care of her kids, and she's saving the day with the help of her kids. What I liked about this one is it takes that idea and it flips it on its head. Emily Blunt can't save the day. Cillian Murphy can't save the day. And seeing that kid who's been such, a little, scaredy cat for the first two movies have that radio and pick up the gun. I think it's such a great shot. It's so well done. Of course, we expected her to save the day as far as Millicent Simmons. And I thought she could have got to that speaker a little bit quicker as far as she was taking her sweet time. That was probably my only complaint with it all. But overall, just all around, such a fantastic final 15 minutes to the movie. As far as what the future holds, where the story will go from here, we'll talk about this a little bit now and a little bit in the weeks to come, but I agree with you. I'm excited to see where this story goes. I'm expecting a time jump. I think that they'll start back where this movie ends. The prologue for the next movie will be the end of this movie and the aftermath.
Okay.
But I think because these kids are about to grow a significant amount, and we're probably 2 or 3 years away from this movie, the only really way to do it is to maybe show them living on that island for 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
And then the next step happens where they have to leave the island or whatever it may go from there. But I just hope that they don't de-age the kids as per usual.
Man, that would be a big misstep if they do that. So, yeah, I could see, they start off the first 10 minutes of the next one, and then they say, Avengers Endgame 5 years later, 3 years later, whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Provided, as long as Cillian Murphy is back, I will be happy. But that's all I have for you, Wolf. Any other last remaining thoughts?
Go see A Quiet Place 2, and if you haven't seen A Quiet Place 1, watch it before you go see A Quiet Place 2. Go see both. both excellent movies, well deserved of all the success that's coming from them. So yeah, love it.
That wraps it up for us. Please send us your questions and comments as related to anything, just like we got today, or anything related to A Quiet Place 2. We're really excited to hear what you guys thought. Let us know where you think the story should go next. We're really excited to talk about that next week. But that does it for us. Bye.
Bye, y'all.